Um, okay, we have sound. Okay, if you contact the radio station at kuaw.org, you can definitely, also on kuaw.org, just in case you don't have social media or you're taking a social media sabbatical, you can definitely watch all of the shows on the webpage. But we also have our ongoing station fundraiser that, as you all see, I don't know if I shared it, we're moving into a new studio. So your generous contributions from $1 on up, just put it on PayPal and let it keep being reoccurring. Your generous contributions actually contribute to station ongoing station upgrades. And the beautiful thing is, while they were getting everything together for the station upgrade, they were able to keep us on air throughout this whole time, where we could broadcast from wherever we need to broadcast from. Today, we are excited. We have Dos Minutos with Jorge back. And as you all know, Jorge keeps us informed. When I say informed, he keeps us informed. But he also started his new consulting business as well. So not only is he a worker in the community, an advocate for our youth, which is amazing. He has an amazing job that he just started, and he has his consulting business. So when we get information from Jorge, it's like getting the inside scoop. So we're gonna go on ahead and give Jorge his Dos Minutos with Jorge segment. Go ahead, George.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. It's always a privilege to be on this show ongoing. For those that are tuning in, you can join me on my Facebook or Twitter or Instagram pages as well. Now that I know, I'll start sharing all of this through those social media platforms. Yes, I do have a business. It is titled Fulham for the People LLC. It is literally just a consulting, coaching. Let me help you help yourself, because at the end of the day, you are able to do this on your own. If you didn't believe in yourself, call me. I bet you'll believe in yourself after we finish talking. So moving forward, I normally would have something really political that I wanted to go on an agenda. However, today there's two things that I wanted to talk about. One is the importance and dynamics of critical race theory being taught at home. I know and I understand that you don't want to talked about and taught inside of our school buildings, inside of the curriculum. I get it. I truly am understanding that you want a separation. You don't want someone influencing the mind of your child, which is okay. I promise you this, though. What I'm noticing and what is happening is that there's more overt and covert situations dealing with race. And in Kansas City, Missouri area, you have Park High School, Park Hill South, where they were actually creating a petition to bring back slavery. This was within last week. Then you also have Olathe High School, not the high and Olathe High School, let me say that way, where there was a photo circulating around of a young man creating a homecoming invite that said, "I'd rather not be picking cotton. Would you pick me?" Something of that nature. The issue I have is that this is a conditioning and something that is taught within the community. This is endorsed when you have silence. This is accepted when you don't argue against it. This is also something that has to be dealt with. You cannot just throw it under the rug. You cannot just say, okay, it was just that kid instinct. It was him being a kid. Honestly, we need to check the adults that's in this person's circle, both the teachers, the parents, and other community members, aunts, uncles, cousins, whoever is influencing this young man to think that way. You need to check them. And then the other portion is saying that, is this something truly a representation of our community? Is this how we want to approach these things, these issues? When we are arguing about critical race theory being taught in schools, I understand you don't want it taught because you're afraid that's going to influence a negation of history in a certain fashion for certain groups and demographics. But I'm telling you now, if you continue to let these issues continue to fester, we're in 2021 and this is still occurring. The civil rights movement is over 50 years ago, still occurring. Jim Crow, it was over 100 years ago. This is still occurring. Slavery, 400 years ago. This is still occurring. So you can't tell me that this is something we shouldn't be talking about and shouldn't be addressing, but we can't, if you don't want to rely on the school to do so, then you got to rely on the home to do so. And you also got to make sure that this young man and young girl, because I'm gonna put her out there too, who accepted the invite, who embraced it as if it was something exciting, to be held accountable as well, because she just endorsed it, saying that it was okay. And if that's not how you want to treat people, human beings, American citizens, then you need to do better. So that's my stance on that. That was Dos Minutos with Jorge. Within the near future, I'm going to share a poem about grief that I wrote back in January of this year. It is simply going to help you break down and understand how to deal with grief in a better fashion and why it is okay to accept it versus continuing to refuse it. So I can't wait to share that poem with you all. It is a letter to a friend, and I am excited about that. Thank you for giving me this time. Hashtag Fuller for the people. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking up about that, Jorge. You already know, and a lot of people say the civil rights movement was 50 years ago, and I tell people I'm about to be 46 in 2 months, so it's very real. It's very, and the thing about it is, and this is what I will always say, we are all in wishful thinking here. The one thing, the one part of the DNA that never can be erased without completely destroying the whole person, and the person has no more offspring is the mitochondrial DNA. The mitochondrial DNA can trace all the way back, hundreds of thousands, probably trillions of ancestors. You'll be able to find your ancestors through your mitochondrial DNA. Well, racism is the mitochondrial DNA of the United States. The way the United States was built, they robbed Africa of the people so that they could take over that land. It was not to build the United States. It was not to build the Caribbean islands. It was literally so that they could take over Africa and all of her resources. And so, as a byproduct of taking over Africa and in the beginning stealing people, and then other tribes saw it was profitable to sell people, they wound up bringing our ancestors to this land. This land was built on the blood of our ancestors. I am grateful to people like the Walkers, and even our grandparents, and my mother. My mother was part of. She was a high school student at Westport High School when they rioted in the 60s, in the 70s for civil rights, in the 70s. And the police were beating children who the lie is they rioted. It turned into a riot after they ran up there to those kids who were just walking and saying, they were saying Black Power. They were just walking and talking and chanting like they do now. And the police came in there with batons and hopping out their cars. You listen to my mother, I would listen to her tell this story and I would become enraged, especially when I was a teenager in high school. And we were going through the Malcolm X movement. We had Tupac Shakur. We had, what's the name? Public Enemy. We were going through the Malcolm X at the same time that we were going through the Bob Marley movement. So
I think you froze, but I think we had, I think we were at Public Enemy, and those were just activities, and those were influencing.
Okay,
you froze a little bit.
At the same time that we were doing the Bob Marley, we were doing the Public Enemy and the Malcolm X. Bob Marley was about peace and love, and we could do that. But what we were not going to do is allow you to mistreat us either. And so I tell people think that the civil rights movement is so far behind, but it's not. The same people who are 46, 45, who are 40 and up are the same people who would get mad and spit in our faces. I've been spat on at school, and Lincoln College Prep sided with the white girl who called me a nigger and spat on me. They suspended me. I didn't get to attend my middle school graduation because we were walking down the stairs laughing and joking. Maybe she thought we were talking about her. We were happy talking about how we were going to walk across the stage, act the fool. She leaned over the railing and said, "You niggers," and spat. And then I looked at her and she spat again and it hit me in the face. And so I'm telling y'all, I have children. I started having children young, so I have children in my 20s. But if I'd have had in their 20s, if I'd have had children when everybody else had them, my children would be just now reaching their 20s and still in their teens, like I have my three youngest. Now imagine the children that she raised. She's my age, and she called me a nigger and spat on me. So she guaranteed probably has children anywhere from birth up to 20, any age. This woman who thinks like this is raising her children that way. In Kansas City, we had two incidents. The first incident was a petition. What high school was it, George? Was it Platte County, North Kansas? It was a, do you remember what high
Hill
school?
South.
Park
Park
Hill
Hill
South.
South.
Park Hill South circulated a petition to bring back slavery in Kansas City area. Park Hill is North Kansas City. But, and then Olathe High School, a high school student made a sign, said, if I were Black, I'd be a slave picking cotton. But it's something about, if I were Black, we'd be a slave picking, I'd be a slave picking cotton, but I'm not. So how about you go to the homecoming with me? Whatever the case. I don't know what that has to do with going to the homecoming. But this was in Olathe. Let me explain to you why this happens. And I'm going to break this down to everybody, and hopefully everybody can understand this. And y'all going to see me responding to people who are messaging me on Facebook at the same time. Black people originate from the womb dealing with other races. Our mothers go see white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever, South American doctors when they're pregnant with us. They hardly see a Black OBGYN. When I say white, I mean anything Eurasian. There's watch the movie. What is it? It's a movie called Booty Call. Just watch that movie, or How to Be a Player. One of them two with Bill Bellamy. His mama breaks down what white is. If you ain't Black, you're white to some of these old folks. I'm just saying. But we women, we don't see Black doctors. We don't see doctors our same race. So then our child, when we're getting our appointment, our OBGYN appointment, we and our children don't experience Black doctors. Then during childbirth, it is a room full of everybody else except for Black doctors and nurses. That's it. None of my children had a Black nurse. And I had 3 of my children at Children's Mercy. I mean, not Children's Mercy, at Truman Medical Center across the street from Children's Mercy in the hood in Kansas City. I should have had a Black doctor or Black nurse, Black team, some of that. And I can tell you, I always tell people, Truman treats your babies like gold. They treat the mamas like dirt. They treat your babies like gold. They treat the mothers like absolute dirt. So then we have our children, and our children don't experience Black doctors and Black nurses. Then we have all of from the newborn all the way up to well baby. And they experience everything but Black doctors and Black nurses. So now it's time for our children to attend school. Let's just say preschool. The only time our children are put in the position where they experience Black people completely in their life is when they go to daycare before they start school. Daycare is normally themselves, Black teachers, other Black kids. But once you leave that little small daycare phase, then you start your school education, your education career, as I like to call it. You go to school. You don't see Black teachers, Black principals. It's very rare to have a school where everybody in the school is Black. It's very rare. where you don't see a white face. You see nothing but Black success. So then our children are, from the time they start preschool all the way through their education career. Because my daughter is a professor. I'm pretty sure she's going to go back to school to get her PhD. Matter of fact, she's been talking about it. Black educators are very rare, especially where there's nothing but Black educators. And when there is nothing but Black educators, they do not get the money and the support in order for them to be successful. I witnessed with my own eyes a certain school district. I can't call them out because I have their employee on my show, but the all Black school was the only school in the district to have its accreditation, and they hurry up and pulled the contract to the principal. They found everything they could do to pull that Black principal's contract and get him up out the school. I don't know the specifics about how they did it, but I know it was very underhanded the way they did it. And he made sure that one of their schools had gotten full accreditation, and it was not Lincoln College Prep. So what I'm saying is, we as Black people cling to the hope that other people will have the mindsets that we have. We're loving, we're caring, we're accepting, we're forgiving, we're all of that, because these people are a part of our lives. We cannot see ourselves hating them in the manner that they hate us, because our brains, our neural pathways have been created to see them in a loving manner. They've always been put in positions where they are the saviors or the caretakers or the educators, even when they don't mean us the best interest, even when. But then you have to look at, and this is why I say non-Black, you have to look at the non-Blacks. They can have entire communities. Where that information came from, you'd be hard pressed to find at even a 40% ratio of Black people. You can't even get a 30% ratio of Black people.
I can give you some stats in the Kansas City area. Kansas City area is 1% Black male educators, 7% Black female educators, 1% and 2% Latinx educators, and then the rest is about 80 to 90%. 80%, 70%, around that range, that are going to be white teachers. And the most dominating portion will be white female teachers. And that's just education. That's what the programs we're putting out. But most people don't understand that that's the impact that you see. It doesn't matter which district that you go to. I promise you the same data is resulting. It has been studies for the last 10 years within just the Kansas City metro area. No matter what zip code you go into, if you move to suburbs, if you stay in the inner city, Black children are not faring the same level as their white counterparts. And that's just the facts. Right, I'm not speaking in a term of like this is Black versus white. That's the facts. That is what the data has proven. You may go up maybe 10% if you move out to Lee Summit, but that 10% does not guarantee you a higher inequality, a more quality future, because that's not actually saying anything when you're still below the average norm for one particular group. And I say that just to give you some data, but also I wanted to jump in. There is a project done by Johnson County Community Library System. They do it in partnership with other area high schools. If you have not heard of this, I will tell you to look it up, have your teachers look it up and get yourselves involved. This is the Race Project KC. They will provide information, guest speakers, as well as opportunities to connect across different communities to have discussions about race and its impact within Kansas City. And I know it doesn't seem as something as quality, but it actually is when you're pulling out the Glenn Norths and when you're pulling out the Wesley Hamiltons and they're explaining these things in greater detail. And these are community figures within the Kansas City area.
I'm going to say this about the discussion. I'm sick of the discussion. I am. I'm tired of it. Kansas City kicked off the Civil War. We had the Civil War because Missouri wanted to bully Kansas into keeping slaves. Right now, they are building at the airport, and what was the group is called Life 360. They informed us that that was a slave plantation, that they did not follow simple rules that is literally a law put in place to dig it up, to dig up the remains and ask the families what they want to do with it. We have been having this discussion. See, the problem is, and this is what I'll say, and this is where the racists get everybody. Oh, let's have a discussion about it. Let's talk about it. I'm going to tell y'all like this. I can teach and tell anybody everything you need to know about getting your diabetes under control, about losing weight, all of that. I can talk about it. I can talk about it. I can talk you to death, give you all the statistics, inform people, educate people. That doesn't mean I've lost the weight I need to be losing, because I've not put in an effort to change it. The problem with Kansas City, and this is what I'm going to say, and it's not stepping on what you're saying, George. Kansas City still holds in regards Kelly's Bar. Do y'all know what Kelly's Bar is? They built an entire community around Kelly's Bar. Kelly's Bar is the slave trading post for Kansas City. People who don't believe me, go to our downtown library, the one that has the books, that the big old tall books as the outside. Go upstairs to the archives. Look through, tell them you want to find all the books that mention Kelly's Bar. You pull a book out and you got to kind of get down on the floor, and that's where I got the book from. And I was just reading, and I wanted to know about slavery. We celebrate William Christmas. William Christmas, all of that was slave plantation. All of it. We celebrate Luce Park, and they call it a farm now. It was a plantation. They were hanging and beating slaves in Luce Park. The problem is they want to change the narrative. And here's my issue. When people don't want to admit and accept that this is one of, they call Kansas City the Little South. It is written everywhere. I tell people I have gone to the South. Those racists down there will racist you with all due respect before it. At least when they mistreat you, with all due respect, ma'am, up here, you better act the way they want you to act. The Little South, Kansas City. Let's start with the police department. They hire all these people to come in, and they find technicalities to get the Black people out of here on. But they will never, ever, ever, lie detector you to get you in. They ask you certain questions. But one thing they won't do is go back and lie detector you every 90 days or every, let's say every year to keep it fair. Have you ever raped anybody while you've been a police officer? Have you ever fondled a Black woman or any woman while you've been a police officer? Have you abused their power in any manner while you've been a police officer? See, Kansas City has, and the surrounding areas have systems put in place to keep us where we're at. And I'm going to tell people this. My children were educated in the inner city of Kansas City. We were out at Hickman Mills for a little bit, but majority of my children were inner city educated. And it's not, I sat in New Orleans in 2019 and listened to a white woman smugly say, we were going to go learn about education. And she said, it's been statistically proven that Black people cannot be successful without the help of a white person. I told her, I said, and you're proud of that statistic? What about Africa? I said, so you're telling me Black people cannot be successful without the help of a white person, but you got all these doctors, engineers, lawyers, hey baby, lawyers, all of that, who were educated by Black people and no white person was in sight. But Black people can't be successful without white people. But that's the mindset of Kansas City, you all. And that's what I need people to understand. When you're dealing with racism, racism is so insidious that this very woman who smugly said this, and I almost lost it at the table. And one of the ladies was there. She said, "Ooh, I seen the look on your face," because everybody else was letting her get away with saying some real racist stuff. But this very same woman swears up and down she's not racist. Racist isn't running around hanging people from trees. Racist isn't, that is racist, but I'm not saying that's the only racist. You live in a community where your kids don't even see Black people. So when I walk up in your piece to deliver something, they like, and I'm just like, "Hey, baby." I leave them with a good feeling. When I'm getting ready to leave, they run and grab me and hug on me and don't want to let me go. They wave at me all the way down the street. That's racism, where you nestle in your little safe space and your children do not have any interaction with African Americans. You're racist. I don't care what race you are. You're racist. You can't tell me that you can be Mexican and not have to deal with Black folks, because my god baby is Mexican. I got another guy, a whole Mexican family. I live around Mexicans. White people can't tell me that you can't live around Black people and live good, because we got white people all around me who've moved in because it was cheaper to be here. And their children play with the Black children on the block. Their children play with the Mexican children on the block. When you make excuses, it's because you're racist. And we can talk to you all and Black explain to you all till we're blue and Black and pink in the face.
I think your internet just went out on the last part. But I wanted to jump in and give people the term that they're used to hearing, is that homogeneous community, where you have particularly one race and one sector and one section. And Kansas City is still completely, and I will say this and stand behind it, very much so segregated. Not only is it a financial segregation, but it is a racial segregation. It is prejudice shown in every instance and system. The reason why I mentioned Race Project KC is because that is an avenue that is inside of the school system. That is a support to help. So when we say discussions, this is going to provide these discussions and safe spaces and opportunities, because they're not going to get it in the community, because it's the only, what I've noticed is at every march, at every protest, at every conversation, it's the same group of people. If it's the same group of people and nobody else is new coming in, that information is just preaching to the choir. So in order for us to change the narrative, you got to join in and jump into those discussions. And I understand. I will tell you, there's a lot of times where I'm tired of having a discussion about race. I'm tired of having a discussion about race in Kansas City, but I can't let that be weary, because at the end of the day, if you're someone that has not met me before and began to have this conversation, you're going to leave with wisdom and knowledge that you didn't have before meeting me, because I know that that is my chance to impart that wisdom on you. So one of the things I will tell people to watch is Blood Brothers, the documentary of Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, that's out on Netflix.
That. Yes,
that documentary was excellent in explaining the difference as when you go through Mecca, when you actually seek out the understanding of that religion and then come back renewed, you saw that there was a shift in the mindset of Malcolm X, even though it was by any means necessary. When we say any means, that means he's tried all means, not just one, but all of them to achieve the goal. And now you notice that that is something we use as rhetoric to just say we know Malcolm X by any means necessary, but did not realize that as he was going through this process and growing, he was seeing that these are the systems that we are playing into just as much as we are actually getting harmed by. And so the other organization, I'll tell people, if you're an adult and you're like, hey, I just want to get my foot wet, tip my toe in the water, get some kind of information in me, look for Race, Equity, and Inclusion, REIKC. They have programming. They have groundwater programming, which is just simply put, we have about 90 minutes or actually 2 half-day professional developments that we work with people, with organizations and businesses, as well as just individuals. Join in, look for it. I'm challenging you to look for it because if you don't actively seek it, then you're not trying to use it. So if you don't go to the library, then you're probably not going to use the library. And we can suggest all of this, but I think what we're saying is the talking points, the discussions, the rhetoric that you continuously get that you don't act upon, don't actively engage in dismantling the systems because you have found it comforting that it is working in its manner for you. Not everyone, but for you. That's what we're saying. We're tired of saying, we're not sugarcoating that Kansas City doesn't have a racist past. We're not sugarcoating that we don't go through, I wouldn't say microaggressions, but that's what they call it. We're not sugarcoating that we go through these aggressions, not only from police, but also just other homeowners, from other constituents, other Kansas Cityans. I know when I was running for office and I was walking up to the door and I saw complete fear on someone's eyes, even though I have a clipboard in my hand and some ink pens and saying who I am, I still saw fear. You didn't want to talk to me. You didn't want to associate with me. And I'm a granted towards the pandemic. It was heavy in that. But now we see that we're still in this pandemic, but you're still going to the club. You're still going to Kelly's and Westport. You're still hanging out in those areas into which we know was profiting off of the labor of other individuals that they can do cheaply. When we say they stole people from Africa, they also murdered the indigenous people on this land. Let's not even forget to sugarcoat that. They killed, Holocaust, however you want to call it, the indigenous people within these lands while bringing over the same thing, indigenous people from another land to do the same acts because they found that they would do the labor and the resilience to survive was stronger. They would do whatever it took to survive, and thus promotes this generation we're in now. We have made it to this point. We've made it to this degree because we have survived, and our ancestors survived, our elders survived. So when we say resilience, Black people are tired of hearing that word. We want to actually live. We want to be liberated and be free. When we talk about financial gaps, the gaps between incomes, we're saying that simply put, let us get paid the same way you get paid so that we can go on the same vacations you go on, so that we can all find enjoyment in worthwhile living or quality of life. When we go see our doctors, we don't feel like we're getting told that we have a higher tolerance of pain because that's what they associated with that, because they were mythically taught this
They're
magically.
still being taught. They're still being taught that.
And now having to admit that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and when you said that about the work, it's sad because they always say that Black people are lazy, but we're the hardest working people still. And one of the things Councilman Ellington said, he asked why the unions were not actively recruiting young Black people, and they said they didn't think they could pass the drug test. I'm gonna tell you a story. I'm now a union truck driver, and I'm gonna tell you a story that one of the union truck drivers who's been in the union for 20 something, 30 something, I think he's been 35 over years. He told me that many of the union companies secretly have a policy where they bring on all their friends and friends' sons. These are non-Black people. The union in Kansas City does not have a lot of Black people. And the guys would get addicted to drugs, and they would pay or have special programs that they have affiliations with to put those guys through drug rehab, and the men never lost their jobs. Here's the thing. These companies knew that truck drivers were doing drugs, and they put truck drivers through drug rehab and did not notify the federal government. This is what we're talking about. And they've still been doing it for years, still doing it. And
it's advantageous. It's just like what way they explain human resources. It is supposed to help support the business and not the employees, right? So when we look at the union, it's supposed to be advocates for the employees, but in reality, it is actually to ensure that the employee still is a part of the workforce, but also removes the businesses from in trouble. And then we look at it by race. It was not done for Black people, even though we benefited off of unionizing when we first started that.
Regardless if it was done for Black people or not, we are citizens. We have our rights. And regardless, like I said, these are CDL holders. It is illegal to have any type drug in your system when you're a CDL holder. And so, like your job, y'all could probably get wasted, and it ain't no problem as long as you don't do it on the job. Here, it's a federal offense. It's federal. You got to go through this program where you got to pay out like $150 a week just to go. They said it started out as 50. One man said he paid 150 for rehab, certain type of rehab that the federal government has put in place. But they don't want to hire Black people because they don't think Black people can pass a drug test for marijuana. That's what I'm saying. That's what happens here in Kansas City. You can go to any construction site and you will see an abundance of non-Blacks. Abundance. Because that's the way things are set up in our area, the Kansas City and surrounding area. And people will say, oh, I'm so sick and tired of hearing Black, Black, Black. I'm like, well, how you think we feel living it? And yes, Black people who are willing need to have the conversation. I'm not willing to have the conversation anymore. I'm not. Because at this point, that means you just don't want to. You just don't want to change. I literally had a man that I worked with in trucking. And this man, little lady, and I was the only person who was willing to help him. And he told me, he said, you know what, little lady? He said, I know I'm getting on your nerves. I said, no, you're not. No, you're not. You need help. I'm willing to help you. Don't worry about it. He said, you know, I used to have a problem with the Blacks. This man is late 50s. I used to have a problem with the Blacks. He said, but the only people who've been helping me since I've become a truck driver is y'all. He said, everybody else ignores me. I ask a question. They treat me like I'm bothering them. You know, they snicker at me. He said, y'all stop. Y'all take the opportunity to fully explain. And then y'all give me y'all number and say, hey, if you get lost or if this, that, and the other, give me a call. And he was like, y'all are the only people. I said, you know why? Because from the womb, we've been trained to love all people. Not just our own, but all. And so in this instance, after seeing pregnant women get tear gas, pepper bombed, beat by cops because they were protesting what was going on in Seattle. And they were protesting the George Floyd thing. These are pregnant women who never dealt with Black people. When I can see them and I can see that they have had a heart change after seeing somebody kneel on somebody's back for 9 minutes, and that caused them to wake up and say, hey, something's wrong here. Y'all are mistreating these people. After seeing Gabby Petito's mother come out, or Petito, whatever her name is, after seeing her mother come out and say, wait a minute, the same type attention y'all gave my daughter to find her, and you found her body with the quickness, I need y'all to do that for all these other people who are missing. And she didn't single out and say Black people, but she specifically spoke about the young Black man who was a geology student who was missing in Arizona. She specifically spoke about him. No one can tell me that at this point, anybody who don't get it, you're choosing not to get it. Like the mother said in the article concerning the slaves would be picking cotton, I believe all lives matter. And though I believe all lives matter, Black lives should matter to everybody. And I'm not, like I tell people, I am not affiliated with any organization because I don't know where they get their money from and I don't know how they spend it. But I will say that we've been saying Black Lives Matter before it became a group and a hashtag. And that's my thing. The information that George gave, y'all, let's stop having the same. I see the same non-Black people at these events speaking out, going to the events, showing they care. And then they got to go home and argue with their family on Thanksgiving. At some point in time, when you cannot see that you are evil when you don't love a person who's never done anything to you, because think about it. I always hear, oh, I had a bad experience with a Black person. I done had hella bad experiences with white folk. Mexicans, Asians, Middle Easterns, Russians, South Americans, and I don't hate nobody. I'm going to speak up for my Blackness, but I don't hate nobody. And when that is used as an excuse to mistreat people, that is a form of racism. You are racist. And people won't call you that. And your family won't say nothing to you. J.C. Nichols' redlining has spread throughout the world. You go to Ghana, and they have redlined certain cities in Ghana, in Africa, where they are the minority. The Asians, the Latinos, Latina community, the Spanish community, the European, I call them Eurasians because Eurasia was never separated. We just separated it by words. So the Eurasians and the South Americans and the North Americans, they have used redlining in Africa to make sure that they don't live amongst the Black people, the Africans. This conversation needs to turn to action. There needs to be an action plan created for these school districts, not just a conversation. What is our action plan? What will these children know? When these children get to finally knowing the very machine that they use to tear down Black people was made possible by Black people, maybe there'll be more respect. But that's for us to do like Mr. Walker and KUAW is doing and take control of our narrative with our media. But we have to remember that the neural pathways are set. They've been created. If you were raised and you were not raised to love Black people or just love all people, but when you see a Black person, you're not shocked to see them because you're like, oh, that's such and such. Like John B., he was raised in a Black church, in a Black community. He ain't surprised to be around Black people. Paul Wall, they not surprised to be around Black people. They have those neural pathways that allow them to see us as them. It's not oh, they Black. They see our skin tone, but they love us. When the children who are doing this stuff, their minds are going to be hard pressed to change, if they're going to change at all, because their neural pathways in all of the different nationalities and races, when you do not interact with Black people, your neural pathways are created. And when you know anything about neural pathways, that's your permanent way of thinking until you shut that neural pathway down and force your brain to create a new one. Do y'all know how excruciatingly painful that would be? To force close a neural pathway that has been there since the womb, and to force your brain to open up a new one, that is withdrawal symptoms pain. So when we begin to say, what is the action plan? I don't mind dialogue where we're writing an actual action plan and we're coming up with SMART goals to that action plan. We're not just talking. We ain't Black-splaining nothing else. We're not educating anybody. We went over our time on talking about this, but I need people to understand, not just dialogue, action plan and SMART goals. How are we going to fix this thing? What needs to happen? We need to bring in more Black educators. They need to see that Black people are just as intelligent. They need to have Black teachers. Lee Summit need to just scrap the whole dang administration and teachers. I'm sorry. I know a young Black girl who got cheated out of her A, and she was sick about it because of a Lee Summit teacher was jealous because she was about to come out of his class, not the graduating class, but his class with a higher score than all the other kids. So he graded her paper or whatever and didn't give her an A just so he could bump her down underneath the little white girl who was right underneath her for a class grade. This is where the dialogue happens, but we need to create an action plan, and we need to create SMART goals, and we need to keep coming back and revisit, and we need to start calling these folks racists to their face. I don't like the term people of color because I've been called the N-word by Hispanics and Native Americans, and I always say, if you got a word for the N-word in your language that would offend a Black person, you can't say you one of us. Because the only thing we can do is talk about each other mama and call each other cuss words and be ready to fight. But if we call one of each other the N-word, we'd be like, you so stupid, you one too. It doesn't offend us to be called one by one of our own. That's where I need us to understand. And we want to thank George for coming in. I need everybody to rewind. Go back to where he said, attend these. But let's make it a point to stop seeing the same non-Black people at these events. Start making it mandatory for senior classes to have a whole entire class on Black studies taught by a Black professor. Can we do that? Oh, that's right. Majority of our Black studies professors are non-Blacks. Majority of our African American studies professors in the USA are not African Americans.
Yeah, I was gonna say, hold on, backtrack on that because I was like, no, most of my African American studies, but then I was like, no, they're mostly African, talking about African American studies,
Right.
and
They didn't get to experience the African American experience. They just know what they learned from white people.
Right. And I will say this, when we say action steps, we want to see things happening. That's like you finding a candidate that you would like to support in an election and helping them get onto the ballot, helping them get in an elected office. That also looks like you looking at the system in depthly and saying, okay, we need to do an audit. And can we do this audit based off of the number of people of color that has gone through your application process? Are you actually looking and screening them? Are you denying them? What are the metrics? Being able to have some data pulled behind it. When we said affirmative action was supposed to be the data and the metrics that showcased and said, yes, we have this in place. Yes, this person got a fair opportunity. Yes, they're in this position. But what it got turned into was a quota meeting situation. I needed to have you in this position so that I met a quota so that you can go ahead, so I can continue this funding source. And we also need to look at
it turned into just giving it to a minority, which could be a woman and a non-Black. It is 8:55 here on the Lyne't Gray Show, and I just want to thank everyone for listening. Like I said, let's end the dialogue and begin the action plans and the SMART goals. You set goals and you come back and you keep remeasuring. Let's set the SMART goals and then the action plan. And we come back and we keep revisiting and keep measuring, and we have measurable results. The data should show measurable improvement. This cannot wait 5 years, 10 years. This is an immediate issue that needs to be addressed. Thank you all so much for watching the Lyne't Gray Show. We will discuss the other stuff most likely next week if I don't have a guest pop up. I want to thank George Fuller, Jorge Fuller with Fuller for the People Consulting, Fuller for the People LLC. And he hit him up if you, I mean, he is excellent. Also, the Lyne't Gray Show on KUAW will be on site at boxoutstress.com, Black Tie Affair Gala. If you want
it's
more
the Night of
information,
Champions. Night of Champions. And we got 2 community champions that I know for sure that are exciting, that are completely dominating in the market. So if you haven't gotten tickets are still on sale. Thank you to Mama Nay for purchasing a ticket and making it a donationable ticket. So that means even if you are not able to come, you can make a donation by buying the ticket.
Yeah.
You can say that person can get a Box Out Stress session. That is the organization that I am supporting. That is the organization that I am consulting.
boxoutstress.com/gala. That's where you go get the tickets.
Absolutely. We're going to have a good time. October 2nd
right.
from 7 to 11. I'm already ready to put on my 9s.
All righty, y'all. Well, this is the Lyne't Gray Show here on KUAW. We will see you all next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And someone just asked me, I think I'm 6 hours ahead of Nigeria, and I know I'm 5 hours ahead of Ghana. So whatever, or 5 hours behind. Y'all are ahead of me. So right now at 6 to 9 o'clock p.m. and that's the time. But I come on at 8 o'clock p.m. So at 6 and at 5, and you can watch the show. And we thank you all. I want to thank Mr. Walker again for keeping us on air and knowing how to work out these technical difficulties, because I would have been just gave up a long time ago. I'll be like, forget it, we ain't have the show because I can't figure it out. So, y'all take care, and I would wish everybody joy, love, peace, happiness, health, wealth, well-being, total enlightenment, prosperity, success, a whole lot of money to you. Take care. See you next week. Bye-bye.